Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Makers Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me I have an amazing human being, Miss Abigail Teixeira. I hope I said that right, Abby.
You did.
Yes? Perfect. All right. That being said, I wanted you guys to kind of put down whatever you're doing, listen up. This is really important. We've had Abby in our community for a while. I love her expertise and also how she shows up in the community. So I wanted you guys to kind of pay attention to this and how it might actually affect and impact your life. Abby, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here. I can see the Christmas tree back there. So
Yeah.
for those of you who are watching this, maybe at a later date, just letting you know that we are doing this literally a couple of weeks before Christmas. Anyways, having said that, Abby, can you tell our audience members a little bit more about what you do and how you got involved in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the past 9 years, I have been on an incredible, intense transformational journey as a survivor of childhood trauma and abuse, as well as healing from recovery from addiction that plagued my life for about 15 years. So from my mid-teen years to my late 20s. Until I made a huge, massive decision 9 years ago that enough was enough. I was tired of living the life that I had been living up until that point and numbing the pain. And I pretty much wrote a stake in the ground and said, now is the time for change. And so that for me was the beginning of what I like to call the unraveling. And so went into some deep diving into my just all the things that I had been running away from for all of those years. And through incredible amounts of supports, I've been on just such a beautiful healing journey that hasn't always been beautiful. It's definitely comes with its challenges. But now that has led me to now living in my life in purpose, serving my community, serving women, mothers. I've become a mom in the last 5 years. So I have three beautiful children with the fourth on the way, due actually New Year's Eve. So, and now I pride myself in being a fierce breaker of generational chains and just really educating others who come from a trauma background, that they too can have this change and that they too can really, be able to have the ripple effects of what it means to be the one in the family that says enough is enough. It changes with me. It stops with me. And how, your children and my children are the ones who are the beneficiaries of that. And so it's just been amazing. And I've also become a women's transformational life coach. And so I help women through their own journeys of transformation from all different backgrounds, from all different areas. These are women who are ready to just let go of the things that have been stopping them, their hidden barriers, their like limiting beliefs, all of that kind of stuff. And it really is such fulfilling, powerful work, one person at a time, one talk at a time. So I'm also an international speaker, best-selling author. Actually, just this week, we got the announcement that my third book that I've been that I had a chapter in went bestseller as well. So it's really cool and exciting to kind of be in this place in life where I never would have imagined this, 10 years ago, where I came from, right? Like I do have a nursing background as well. I was in the nursing field for 17 years. So always had a heart and passion to really help people, and make an impact in the community. It's just that now it's just gone into a much higher level where I have direct access and impact to the women that I serve in the community, and beyond. And it's just such an honor and privilege, and that's how I kind of came across your platform. And I've spoken in the summits, and it's just been such a joy to be able to share a message of hope and healing for so many others that feel very isolated, when we talk about these kind of topics. I know I felt that for sure, where I felt very like alone, that no one understood. But I was very wrong. Once I started speaking up and sharing my message, so many people came up to me and said, you just told my story, right? And I didn't think, I thought I was the only one, those common things, right? And I just really am very passionate about breaking the stigma around some of these topics. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit about myself.
Awesome. I mean, I love your stories, and you have such a rich and diverse background about how you got here. So let's kind of backtrack and go back to the beginning because for many of our audience members, they're in that very first step of the journey. And I kind of want you to kind of put yourself back in those shoes about how you one day found out you are where you didn't want to be, basically,
Mhm.
and try to figure out how did I get here? Because that's usually, and you mentioned nursing. I know that you're a very heart-centered, giving person. So that being the case, it's easy for people like yourself that are constantly giving, wearing so many different hats, to kind of forget about themselves, to forget about, what their dreams, aspirations, goals are, or who they really are themselves. So that being the situation, when is that realization, that moment? When did that happen for you?
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about that story and kind of the first or the initial step that put you on the right path on where you're going. And hopefully that serves as inspiration for all who's listening.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned, I am a survivor of childhood trauma. And like most children who've experienced that, there was no way of really processing the things that I had gone through. I come from a background of, like most families where whatever happens in the home stays in the home. You don't talk about it to anyone, especially when it comes to like abuse. And as children, we want to make meaning of the world around us. And when there was no answers as to like, how do I process this? Like, how do I, all these things that are happening, why is this happening? All of that kind of stuff. We make meaning about it, and most children will revert to making it mean about themselves, I'm bad, there's something wrong with me, this is why mom and dad are this way, or whatever it is, right? And um and a lot of shame, it becomes very much like shame based meaning making. And that's really what followed me into my teen years and what led to addiction and all that kind of stuff, was really just wanting a solution and answer. And the best way that I found was to numb it, right? So as soon as I got introduced to substances, it was an immediate effect of numbing, where like finally for once in my life, I didn't have to feel these things, I didn't have to think about them, and I just numbed. And that led down a very destructive path for me, because on top of the trauma that I had already experienced, there was more trauma that came over top, because I was functioning in this lifestyle of just chaos, of addiction, and around the wrong people, all that kind of stuff. And along the way, I was very functional, so I went to school, got my nursing degree, I got married to the love of my life. We've been together for almost 15 years now. One person that truly believed in me, that saw beneath all the layers of darkness that I kind of had at that point. And but what really happened was, like I said, like I just became a very shell of a person, because although I was doing these things, like I was, working in a really good job, I was traveling, I got married, all of that kind of stuff, I was really suffering in silence. A lot of people didn't know that I was struggling with severe anxiety and depression. I kind of like hid myself, and just was living this cycle of, work, home, alcohol, go to sleep, and then work, home, and it was like this repetitive cycle. And basically about 9 years ago, so the summer of 2014 was a really big turning point for me, where I was just exhausted. I was exhausted of living this way. And, those who really knew me and, cared for me, one by one started to kind of distance themselves from me, because like I wasn't sharing anything. I wasn't really being open and vulnerable. Excuse me. And so, um, like I purposely kind of pushed people away from me, to the point where I was left pretty much just with my partner, right? And it was this one morning I woke up, and I literally woke up in a jail cell. And I got in trouble with the law for the second time. And that was really my rock bottom, my final rock bottom. And I woke up that next day, got home, got driven by cab, got home, and I just really reflected on, like, okay, like the life I'm living right now, there's only one destination, right? And they say that addiction will lead you to one of three places, which is either institution, um, like basically an institution, a hospital, or death, right? And I knew that I had already touched two of those, two out of the three destinations, and I knew that I was very close to, if I continued on this path, of dying. And although I had struggled with severe depression, anxiety, and also suicidal ideations, that for me was more of a cry for help. I didn't actually want to leave this world and leave the people that truly loved me and believed me with all the pain that I had carried for all of my life, right? Because I truly believe that's what happens, is that when what we don't transform from, we transfer to, and it's usually to the people that we love the most. And so that was the breaking point for me. So I woke up and I just said, enough is enough. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of living this way. Something needs to change. And I called out to the universe. I'm definitely a very spiritual person, but I had disconnected myself from that. But I called out and I just said, like, help me. I need help. And I finally surrendered to the fact that I needed help. And then I went actively searching for support and help, and got super vulnerable and super willing, to try anything and everything. So I developed this attitude and mindset of whatever it takes. And that's how I entered into that journey. And it's truly a decision. It's as simple and as complex as just a decision, right? Is making the decision and then managing that decision day in, day out. And that's what it's been for the last 9 years, where I made that decision and I said, whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it. And I have up until this point, right? And that's what's led me down this beautiful path of discovery, of healing, of connection, all of that wonderful stuff that comes when you really start doing that kind of work, that inner work. And so so that was kind of my breaking point. That's what led me down this path.
I love it. Abigail, thank you so much for that authenticity and that vulnerability and all the lessons you just covered in such a short
Yeah.
period. So I'm going to go back a little bit because this was truly amazing. First of all, let's talk about coping mechanisms because we all have them. Some are good, some are not. And whether we realize it or not, our kids are watching
Yeah.
and they pick up on those. And that becomes their model because that's what mom did, that's what dad did, right? So it becomes really important for us to understand how we cope with feelings, thoughts, and challenges in our lives, and how we role model that behavior. You actually mentioned really important point that certain coping behaviors that are not healthy led you to darker places, led you down the path that you didn't, that was away from your authentic self, like away from your spirituality, away how you wanted to show up in the world. So really, really amazing lesson for all the parents listening right now, that it doesn't just affect us. The other part was what you leave behind, and you don't want to be leaving your pain, your guilt, your challenges, and you don't want to leave those for the world. You don't want to leave it for the people that are closest to you, because when you leave the world, those are the people that actually inherit everything that you've left behind, good, bad, and ugly, right? So
Mhm.
really, really important lesson there. Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
So, and then you also mentioned that moment, that decision making that is simple yet so complex and has to happen at the right time and the right place and all of that. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen people when they come to you, they're at that point when they have to make that decision, or you see them repeat the same mistakes over and over again and go through the struggles and they don't know how to get out of it?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes up for me when I think about that moment in time for me is that I was gifted with the gift of desperation. And so when you're at a place where I was just desperate, like desperate, like I knew that I couldn't continue living the way I had been living up until that point. And so that gift of desperation led me to the point of just surrendering, right? And saying, okay, this is bigger than me. I can't do this by myself. I need help, all of that kind of stuff. And I think what some people struggle with is, and this also ties in with rock bottom. So we hear a lot of people talk about, rock bottom moments in life. And I believe that we can have multiple rock bottoms. I know I had multiple rock bottoms. And the way I envision it is that when I finally hit that last rock bottom was because I took the shovel that I had been digging this hole, like myself into this dark hole. I finally took that shovel and threw it away. And I said, okay, this is my rock bottom. I'm not digging anymore, you know? And then came the gift of desperation and the surrender and all that kind of stuff. And I think when people get to that point, they're faced with that decision. It's a crossroad, right? Where they know enough is enough. They've hit multiple rock bottoms, but the thought of doing the work, like where to even begin, that's the biggest thing. When people come to me, they're like, I have all these problems, I have all these things that are going wrong in my life, these things I want to change. Where do I even start? Right. I think that's where it becomes very overwhelming. And that's why I believe it's so important for people to share their stories, and to see themselves in someone else who has been down that path and say, wait a minute, that person is telling my story and look at where they are. There's hope, right? Hope is so powerful and profound. And I know that impacted me where, I started to, when I got myself out there and I started to look for resources and supports, the most powerful and impactful moments for me were hearing other people share their stories and seeing myself in them, and then finally feeling not so alone. And that gave me a starting point where it was like, okay, for starters, let's release the shame and let's speak up about these things, and let's share with each other that it is possible. And we start with that, right? Just like opening up and sharing and finding the resources and supports. And that's why I'm so passionate about guiding women now through their own journeys, because I've been there. I can look them in the eyes and say, I know exactly what you're going through. I've been there too. I know it feels overwhelming. Let's start with this. Right. And we just start with one step at a time, one day at a time, sometimes an hour, a minute at a time, but it's really about just that, taking that first step, making the decision first, and then taking that first step into the journey, with the support. And again, the key thing there is not doing it by yourself. I think where people really struggle is that they think, I got myself into this mess, so I'm going to get myself out of it. And it's like, no, the consciousness that got you to that place is not going to get you out, you know? And so it's really recognizing that we cannot become ourselves by ourselves. Right. And so I think that's one of the key things, really, when we get to that place at that crossroads, right, is the decision, and then making sure that you're not doing it on your own, finding someone else that you can turn to that will help guide you down that path.
I love there's two big takeaways here, guys. I hope you were listening. Number one is the fact that you just said, I got myself into this place and I got to get myself out. It's really good that you're taking credit that I got myself into this place, regardless of what happened to you, right? So that's really important. The second part about I got to get myself out of this place, that's the part that needs to change, because that's the person that actually got you into this place. So you don't want to be solely relying on that person getting you out. So that being said, we need to verbally process. A lot of times when we hear ourselves hear things, even if that person that is sitting there is just listening and not giving any feedback, that in itself has changed. But this is not something you can do by standing in front of a mirror and doing. You need to have this kind of dialogue, nonverbal dialogue as well as verbal dialogue, that starts the transformation process. Really, really important points. Abby, I know that our time is short and you are just a wealth of knowledge and insight. How can people connect with you and gain more information as far as how to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm most present on Instagram, and my handle is at uh.vee. But then I also have a website and everything is on there. So all of my media appearances, um, at like my story, my background, how to work with me, how to coach with me, all of that kind of stuff. And it's www.abigailteixeira.com, just like that. And through there, there's also access of emailing me directly if you want to chat further. I always love meeting people over virtual coffees or teas. And yeah, I'd love to connect. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity. This was a really great conversation.
So, audience members, families, as I mentioned to you, Abby is very heart-centered, very giving. She has given me a whole host of things that you can have, from gifts to links. So make sure that you go down to the description of this video below, click on it, and open up those. and kind of benefit from them. She is here to support you. And also in the process, I want you to role model the behavior for your children. That is okay not to have all the answers, that the world is not a dark and scary place, that there are people genuinely interested in making it a better one, interested in supporting us. And we need to role model that behavior so they understand that they can ask for help and it's okay to do that. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you connect with us by clicking like and subscribe to this channel so that you get notified of all the experts that come here, share their gifts and expertise like Abby has, and go from there. Abby, thank you so much once again for being here. This was a delightful conversation. Any final words for our audience members before we finish today?
Yeah, I just encourage everybody to shine their light, reclaim their light, and tell your story. We all have one. We all have one, and somebody is going to be impacted by what you have to share. You just have to share it.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
So thank you.